Hi guys, Dave from Dave's Glory Shopworks here, and on this episode we're continuing the rebuild of the C6 Ford automatic transmission. Last I left it, we'd cleaned all of our parts, went through the basics of it anyway, and now we're at the point of assembly. But before we assemble, we got a couple little things to do. We've already been soaking all of our different clutch packs nice and happily. Everything's cleaned up good, but this is no name brand petroleum jelly, Vaseline, whatever. This is great if you don't want to nick or cut seals, and it also is an excellent jelly to use when mixed with ATF to stick your thrust washers and all your wear spots together so they don't continue to fall out. And it is 100% mixable with the ATF. You're not putting anything in the transmission that shouldn't be there. There is a product on the market called Trans Jelly or Trans Gel, and it literally breaks down into ATF and plain white petroleum jelly. So I'm going to mix this up a little bit right quick. It doesn't take much, and from there we're ready to go. So you just need, I don't know, this thing's about half full, so I'm gonna pour in, that looks like, I don't know, give it a third of a cup. And then we're just gonna spend a little time mixing. And we're happy there. Good enough. That part's ready, and there's a nice cover for it now too. Alright, transmission pan just got an upgrade. See that magnet in there? It was not inside the transmission pan, so I elected to put one in. Always good to have a magnet in your transmission pan. It'll help with collecting any wear and tear on the initial startup and running the first few miles, you know. Everything's going to kind of have to seat back together and everything, so there will be some little bits of metal debris and such, and they'll all collect on the magnet instead of getting cycled back through and plugging up the filter. For now, I can put the pan off to the side in a safe place, and we're good to go. Anyway, I cleaned up the pump housing surface, blew it all out, cleaned up the, what is it called, the front band servo bore. Cleaned off the paint out of it, not paint, cleaned off the old gasket residue, that kind of jazz. So all my surfaces are pretty well cleaned up. I'm not worried about this outer surface here yet. You can see that's from what I got when I painted it, and this surface has to be cleaned up nicely anyway before it goes against the engine. So I'll do that after I've got all this stuff sealed up inside. First things first, we're going to get after that rear piston. So let me get this out of the way for a moment. So it's going to be one of these two guys. Here's the trick what you do. You take your seal with a clean screwdriver. You just push on the side of the seal, grab it. Now this seal is not a lip seal, it's just a square cut seal. You can see that, it's just square cut, no lip, no anything. So we pull him off, and then we take our inner seal. We're still going to check him as well. We don't know if he's a lip seal or what he is. You got to be a little bit careful because you don't want to mark the housing that the seals sit in. You don't want to screw up the bore, all that jazz. So I try to just tease that old seal out. If I can nick it and cut it, whatever, because it has to come out no matter what. We are not going to trust the old seal and put the whole transmission back together again with possibly one more out seal. This is a mystery transmission, and I don't know the history of it. My customer picked it up and bought the transmission from somebody. So for all we know, there was some weird problem with it, and we had no idea. There we go. The seal is out. Orientation is up like the piston. And if we look, again, square cut seal, no lip, so no worry about orientation on that. So there's our two old seals. Now, we take this guy first, and we have a match. Looks good to me. And we got to dig in a little bit. I just kind of look for ones that are close. So I got one in there, looks like he fits the bill. Let's open them up. The reason why we do this one at a time, if you were to pull all the seals out and throw them on the bench, and even if you matched them up after that, you're still going to have a problem with if there is an orientation to the seal. And as we come across that, I'll show you. But yes, that guy's a match for that. So I'm going to put the seals in. And there you have it. That seal is in place now. Same thing with the new outer seal. You can pull on them a little bit, stretch them out some, but you don't want to overstretch the seal because then you're going to have fitment issues when it's going together. There we go. Now, take the two old seals so you don't get confused, put them somewhere that you can reference them if you get into trouble, but that's about it. You're just going to want to reference them. Okay, so seal kit is done with for now. Now, we take our trans jelly and we just brush it on the seal lightly. We don't got to go crazy here. Get it all around. Same thing on that inner seal. I just like to run my finger around it. And we know we're good there. And then we're going to take our transmission case. Same thing. We're going to grab a little bit of that trans jelly. We're going to run it around the bore and around the inner bore. That way we know we've got lubrication for assembly. It doesn't take much. You don't got to coat it on in there and get so much in that you can't see what you're doing anymore. And this guy just goes in. You try not to touch the sides. Now the hardest part is just being gentle enough to get it to go in and gently compress those seals. There we go. We're in. Just like that. Yep. Happy, happy. Now we're going to have to fight with that one-way clutch hub. And I will get you the name for that piston. I'm just calling it the rear piston. This one-way clutch hub doubles as the retainer. There is no ridge for the snap ring for that spring pack to go on. So this guy doubles as a retainer. Now also, if you look, there's this hole on the side and a hole right here. You look in the bore, I don't know if you can see it or not, but if you look in the bore, there's one spot with a hole that'll correspond to this. Do not mess that up. You have to get them in the right location, or else this is lubrication for the one-way clutch, and it will not lubricate. Alright, there's my 5 bolts. Now that I got 2 in there, I can stand the transmission up. And I can put the other bolts in. I wish I could get a better view for you, but we'll get her together. Alright, now comes the part where I pause the video so I can get the torque specs for the one-way clutch hub. And I'll check the name of that piston, and if they call the one-way clutch hub a different name. And this hub is called, this guy in here that we put in and we just set to 5 foot-pounds, that is called the one-way clutch inner hub. There you go. The piston is the low reverse piston. So that's where first gear and reverse happen. Hence the one-way clutch. It only allows it to spin one way and allows the planetary to do its thing to change from reverse and forwards gears. Okay, so the torque spec for the one-way clutch inner race is 18 to 25 foot-pounds. I'm going to go to 18, well, I'm going to go to 20. I like a nice round number. Okay, you might not have seen it, I don't know if you could or not, but it's torqued to 20 foot-pounds. And now we have to put the rear shaft support in. I just gotta find it. Alright, so this is the parking pawl gear. This is the rear shaft support. Now the park pawl gear doesn't need any lubrication on it, but the shaft support does have a running fixture in here for some seals. And it says right in the manual that you do not have to stake the rear thrust washer in place again. So all this thrust washer does is goes against this face on the park pawl gear. So stand her up. I wish you guys could see this part, but well, snapped into place. And we can take the park pawl gear, put it on. Make sure it's centered. And if you move the shift lever, park is engaged right here. And now if I move the shift lever, reverse neutral. Now it'll move freely. This goes back. Alright. So now with that guy basically centered, I'm going to throw a little bit of lube on these brass bushings. And like I said, I'm only replacing them if I need to, and those things are in great shape. There's almost no wear on them at all. Alright, now we have our tail shaft, and we have these 3 washers, or sorry, seals. These are steel shim seals. We need to replace them. So let me dig out the steel shims. Now, we should be able to count up 2 that lock together. Those are for the stator support. You see they have this little locking edge on either one. You just clip them together. So we have 2 of those. We will put them on the stator support later, and then we have 3 washers, 3 seals that are non-locking. You see they just butt up like a piston ring. And then we've got these 2, I can't remember quite where they go, but we'll find out together. So they can go in a safe place with the seal kit. So now, we want to pop these seals off. And I think I can do it with my pliers. Would you like to see that? I would like you guys to see it too. Here's hoping you can. Let's see if I can zoom you in a little bit. Nope, accident. Alright, here we go. One. 2. 3. And you see how polished up they are? Mirror finish on all 3 of these guys, and that is why you make sure everything is clean and tidy when you put it all back together. So we will put these guys in. There's one. I suppose you can overstretch them and break them. Like I said, they're a lot like a piston ring in that manner. So we're just going to be gentle and slow and try to make it seem like we know what we're doing. There's 2. Last one. Get it by hand. There. So again, we're going to coat these guys with trans jelly to aid in assembly. I am going to stagger the gaps. There's only 3 gaps, so we're basically going to put them, you know, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. 1, 2, 3. Alright, now we have to put this housing support on. And we've got these 2 tubes that have to fit through 2 little holes right here. And they just press in. You don't do anything fancy, they just press in. You line it up with the park pawl dowel. And they say gently tap it in with a mallet or the handle of a hammer. I do happen to have a mallet. There, seated. I'm gonna get my bolts, get my torque spec, and I'll be right back. Alright, so it took me a few minutes to find the specs. This housing here is actually called the distribution sleeve. And it's got these tubes, etc., etc. So the distribution sleeve holds the support of the output shaft. Okay, finding that, I found the torque specs is 12 to 16 foot-pounds. So we're going to go in the middle to 14 foot-pounds. Alright, next up is going to be putting in the output shaft. Output shaft, straight down, and it does have a V on it, so it should accept the new seals nicely. And there we have it. Output shaft is in place. I believe I have to put a snap ring in down there. I'll verify that, but I'm going to put the governor on. Here's our governor. And if you're worried, it only goes one way, I believe, or I'm in trouble. Oh, I'm going to use witness marks. Give them a little rub together like that. A good reason to do that is so if there's any bits of dirt or whatever, which there shouldn't be because it's clean, but it just makes sure it sounds nice and flat and smooth. So now we need our 4 bolts for our governor. The torque spec is 90 to 120 inch-pounds. Inch-pounds, inch-pounds, inch-pounds. Best way I'm going to be able to do it is by converting inch-pounds to foot-pounds. And I don't know if I'm right, but I've always done it by just dividing by 12. So if I divide 120 by 12, I get 10. So 10 foot-pounds, and away we go. There we are, 10 foot-pounds. Governor body is on. We're good to go. Now also too, I did jiggle the two governor pistons, or flyweights, whatever you want to call them, back and forth. They move nice and freely, and they will be just happy. But now we can put the one-way clutch hub in. So this is where putting some of that trans jelly on is pretty good. It's got to fit onto these. It's got to fit onto these 3 nubs. I hope. Uno momento, por favor. Alright, for all our checking and inspection, we have hit a wall. I was right. This guy is supposed to fit into these 3 little nubs. 1, 2, 3. If you look extra close, the back side is, come on, focus in, focus in. The back side looks like it's been spinning, which it has. The front side's been spinning, the back side's been spinning. There is not supposed to be any markage on this, which I can barely catch anything with a fingernail. I can polish that out, but I need to get a new thrust washer. I did not see that. Again, not being familiar with the transmission as I should be. I will, however, check my box of goodies in my shed right now because, like I said, I had a total of 3 C6s here. 2 of them I rebuilt. 1 was strictly for parts, and I don't know what happened to the parts transmission. I think I still have the pieces. Boy, I hope I do right now. If not, I gotta make a couple of calls. Hold please. Oh, judging by the new shirt, it's tomorrow evening. So, crash and burn last night, couldn't find the parts in my shed, turns out didn't have them. Checked with my buddy about the transmission parts that we used to have when we rebuilt his, and that was broken in his transmission too. So, I've taken the hub and I polished it, got rid of any ridges. It's pretty good. You can still see some markings, but it's nice and smooth now. Not that it matters because the thrust washer is not supposed to run, like spin on the hub. And picked up a thrust washer. Now this guy is a used one, and the transmission shop gave it to me today. It's in great shape. Look at that, and way better frontal shape than the old one. Like, take a look at that. It was getting pretty tinny, you know. So all the tabs are intact, and it can sit right there happily, and we can continue with the install. So we take a bit of our old trans jelly. We're just using this as an assembly goo on this side. And paint the outside of it because that's where the wear happens. I'm also going to paint a little bit on my hub. There. So now this guy can slide into the transmission hub. There. Now, okay, got it figured out. One steel. Clutch engages on the hub. Whoops. More cart before the horse. There. the planetary, the reverse planetary does not go in until the clutch pack is in. There's no real distinction in that in the shop manual. So the steels engage in the case and are held. The clutches engage on the hub. 1, 2, 2. 3. 3, 4, 4, 5. 5 steels, that's what we removed, that's what we put back in. 5 clutches, that's what we removed, that's what we put back in. And the reaction plate. You can see this side has wear on it from the clutch. This side has no wear at all. If this side was gouged up, you could flip it over and use the side against the clutches that has no wear. But since this is so good, we're just going to put it back exactly the way it was. Alright, now we take our snap ring. We decided which one it was. And we put him in. Oh, it's definitely not that one, sorry. This is my largest snap ring, so it has to be the one. I don't remember there being points for the inside of the case, but it has to be the one. And I can see a little bit of witness marking, so just feels weird. Normally you would be prying it away, so there would be, these tangs would be this way, but it is what it is. So, in she goes. And all you got to do is start one end of it and work it down. And there, that guy's in. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to check the spec on how far this will move. Then I'm going to add compressed air to this port right here, and it should actuate those clutches. I'll bring you in for a close-up once I get the spec. Alright guys, we're going to show you the application of this piston assembly. Well, this is a clutch pack. Below it is the piston that we installed and the retaining return springs and retainer plate and all that jazz. So by applying air inside with all the seals lubed up, we should hear a nice steady thump and no like weird bleed off. You'll get a little bleed off from my blowgun because I don't have a rubber tip on it to seal everything. But here goes. You hear that nice thunk. Beautiful. You can see it jumping up and applying against the snap ring. So now as for clearance, I grabbed my feeler gauges and I stacked them together until I got a nice tight clearance. See if I can get in here and show you guys. Right here, I barely get it in. So what we've got and ended up with is a tight 72 thou. That's all these guys added together, 72 thou. Now I struggled a little bit with that spec for the low reverse clutch pack because there is no spec in the manual I'm using. So I jumped online, I went looking, and actually nobody really has a manual with that spec. Ford doesn't. There's lots of guys that have rebuilt these things in their home. And anyway, long story short, I found a couple of transmission rebuilders, and their specs are kind of coincide with what I got. So I got 72 thou. One of the two guys I would trust, he is between 40 and 100 thou, which is quite a broad range. And the other guy is 60 to 80 thou. Now, either one of those, I'm well within specs. I'm right pretty much just about in the middle with the 60 to 80 thou. And I don't generally, like most of my clutches, I like them to be loose. I like them to be tight, because tighter is quicker engagement. But you have to remember, these clutches turn opposite of the steels. The steels sit there and the clutches are constantly wearing. Low reverse will spin the fastest out of all of them. And when it's engaging, you want to make sure that there's adequate clearance for them to freewheel. So that's what I'm getting from the tech support I found. So we're happy. We got good application for the low reverse clutch piston, and we've got adequate clearance for our clutches to live a long, happy life. From there, we just keep assembly.